episode 2 in my series entitled Lucy Designs for Growth. So today I'd like to speak to you about your website and where it sits in the overall customer journey. So if you don't know what I mean by customer journey, there's Finola. Hi, Finola. I don't need to tell you, Finola, about the customer journey, but I want to explain where your website sits in that customer journey. So what is a customer journey? So it refers to the path that your customers take between the moment when they first become aware of you to right through to the end, actually. In fact, right through to working with you and what happens after they work with you and how you can encourage them to continue to advocate for you and become your greatest fan, to talk about you to other people so that they then go on the same path they've heard about you, and so on. So anyway, I'll go into a little more detail. So there's a few steps on the path. So the first one, as I say, is awareness. So this is when your customer first becomes aware of you. So maybe they've seen you on social media, maybe they've seen a review on your Google My Business account, maybe they've seen an ad, so they're first aware of you and they decide then, she looks kind of good, or I'm interested in his products, and that's when they get to what we call the consideration stage. And it's at this point that they usually go to your website. So this is where your website is just fits into this overall journey. And I find that it helps if you understand this journey. When you're planning your website, it helps if you understand where this sits. So when people arrive, it's usually because they already know something about you. And then the idea is that, we design your website in such a way that you can keep them on that path. So studies have shown that actually a lot of people are using their homepage to direct traffic from ads. They're effectively using their homepage as a sales page or as a landing page. I prefer to imagine your homepage as somewhere where you introduce your brand and you give the person who's arrived there a choice of where they want to go next. So it's a sort of a funnel, and that then helps them on their journey to the next step as they go through your website and learn a little bit more about you, about your services, and so on. So you use your homepage. From there, then they might go to your services page, and so this is where ideally you want them to take action. But a lot of the time, the services page is they're still just considering whether they want to work with you. They may not be ready to actually buy from you or set up a discovery call at that point. So if you look at your stats from your Google Analytics, you might see that people go back and forth to your services page. So back and forth from where? So for me, the next obvious step then is your about page. In fact, your about page might actually be the number 2 place that they go from your home page. The about page is often the number 2, the second most visited page on your site. But if not, it's definitely going to be after the services. So they go to your about page, and yes, they want to know about you, but they're still really thinking, what can this person do for me? So I could do a whole session on how to write your about page or what to include in your about page. But what I would like for you to take away from this is that your about page, they're still in that consideration part of the process, and they're thinking, let me just find out a little bit more about this person. But ultimately, they want to know what you can do for them. So then they might go back to your services page and look through that a little bit more, and they're still kind of thinking, maybe I'll contact this person, or maybe I'll buy this product. But they might go then, say, to an FAQ page. So that services page, that sales page, it's not a given that they will buy from you the first time round. So an FAQ page, really good idea. One, to answer the questions that your audience or the reader is still asking themselves. It's also really good for Google because it's places where you can, so we get into SEO at this point. It's a really good place for you to put out the questions, the commonly asked questions, an FAQ that you get asked. And these are the type of questions that your audience are putting into Google as well. So an FAQ page is a really good place to answer the questions that the reader is asking him or herself as he reads your website, but also for your SEO and for being found for keywords. Your FAQ page is really, really important, and a lot of people overlook that. Obviously then your blog is also super important, as it's a place to talk about your products, your services in more detail, give case studies, just give further insight into what it's like to work with you. Again, answer some of the most popular questions that you get asked, maybe go into a little bit more detail. Your blog page for me is actually possibly the most important page on your website, because again, it's you have a freedom there. You're not restricted in terms of copy or images, and you can write as little as or as much as you want, but it's just again a place to go to show your expertise, your experience, and to reinforce how you work and the services that you can offer, and how you can make your audience's life better. So that's all part of the consideration process. So just be aware that your user will go back and forth to these pages, and by keeping your blog up to date, I mean, ideally what you want is to be the go-to person in your niche. So you want people to go, yeah, that was a great blog, I'm actually going to, they think then to come back to it maybe a week later or a month later or whatever. And obviously your blog is content that's there, that stays there forever. So from an SEO perspective, that's a long-term investment in your content, and that's what Google is trying to match with people's search requests. So again, it's a whole other conversation, SEO and so on, but just don't underestimate the power of your blog page. FAQ page I mentioned, and then obviously your contact page is where people can go if they still have questions, if they want to make contact with you to find out more about your services. So they're the kind of the obvious pages that you would have on your website. So and each one obviously needs to have a call to action. Like no page on your website, even a blog post at the bottom, when the person gets down to the bottom there, you should be guiding them to the next step, because they're like, well, where do I go next? So that could be on a blog, for example, that could be you show little snippets of other blog posts on a similar topic that they might be interested in. And the goal is to, not only keep them on your website, because that's also good for SEO and Google, but just to keep them there because you can help them, and these articles and videos can just reinforce that. So when they're in this consideration stage, the more helpful you can be, and the more, if you adopt a stance of an educator rather than a salesperson, that's really going to increase the trust levels as well with your audience. So you might be thinking, well, what happens if they've come onto my website and they've gone through my website and they like what I have to offer, but they're not actually ready to buy from me yet? So how do I keep them on this path, on this customer journey? So that's where things like a lead magnet or something to entice them to sign up for your newsletter comes into play. Because if you can get their email address, well then you've kept that connection with them. You can keep the conversation, even if it's just one way for the moment, you can keep that conversation going and you haven't lost them. So I get lots of my clients, I design their websites and I go, so what email app are you using? Or do you want to use the inbuilt email app in Squarespace if we're doing it there? Or if you're doing it in Kajabi, well, email marketing has to be part of your online course marketing strategy. But I got a lot of people going, I don't really want to do the whole newsletter thing. And it's like, okay, so how are you going to stay in touch with people who are genuinely interested in your services? I mean, there's a way of doing email marketing that is authentic, that it's your tone of voice and so on, and it's not salesy. Lead magnets, you don't have to bombard people with an email a day for the next 5 days. There's no rules around it. I mean, there are statistics that show that what works, but you're free to do it in whatever way you're most comfortable with. But the point is that if you can get somebody to give you their email address, I mean, in one way, that's a gift. They've said, I like what you're saying, I'm interested in your services, I want to know more. And if you just sort of take that email and then go, okay, well, I might be in touch in 6 months. Well, 6 months later, they might be like, who is that again? So don't disregard that email section, because it's a way of keeping that conversation going, and you can then use that to shift them, because ultimately you want to shift them from the consideration stage to the actually buying from you, or what we call the delivery stage. So that's really important as well. Obviously, if you get the person to buy from you, well, you need to delight them and you know, have a really smooth onboarding process, be clear about how you do your work, or if they're buying a physical product from you, well, you know, the shipping and all of that, needs to be smooth, you know, nice packaging, maybe a nice little handwritten card or something when they get their product, just something to make them, you know, this is like basic customer service, to, you know, you want them to come back. But not only do you want them to come back, and this is the sort of the last step in the journey, is that you want them to then go on and tell other people about you. So there's lots of ways of doing that. I mean, obviously you can ask for reviews, you can ask for testimonials, but if you can get them telling their friends and family or their other people like them how great it was to work with you, well, that's when those people start off on that journey as well. So they're at step one. They've heard about you, they're aware of you, and then they go to your website, and that's when they discover you and they get into the considerate, and so that it becomes a sort of a circular motion in an ideal world. So I just thought it'd be interesting to talk about that today, and just to help you see where your website stands in that process, because lots of people just see their website as, well, I need a website, and now I have my website, and I have my beautiful website, but they don't actually see how it's part of a journey that your customer takes. So I have clients, and they're not on social media, they're not connecting with where maybe their customer isn't on social media, but they're not connecting with, I mean, everybody's online, so maybe they don't have a Google My Business account, or they've no way of joining up the dots between where their ideal customer is and how they're going to get them onto their website, and then how they're going to sell to them, do a great job, and then get that person to advocate for them afterwards. So I hope that was helpful. There's a few people on the call. I don't see any questions. Anyway, I'm not going to take questions today. I hope that was helpful, and I'll be back here next Tuesday for my third video, and there's my doorbell, so I'm going to stop now. Okay, thanks a million for watching. Bye.